computer and share screen. Okay, you see the screen, right, Raquel?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So the fact that her father's name is Eliam, clearly the two Shevat girls, right? The two Shevat wives, right? There's only one other person in Tanakh whose name ends in Sheva. There are three women named Sheva. Elisheva, Bathsheba, and guess what? The third woman, who's the real, a heroine.
Oh, that's
I'll give you a hint. The Aharon's wife's name is Elisheva.
right.
This woman's name is not Eli, but
Yoshua?
Yud Kevav Kesheva. Her name is Yehosheva.
I don't know who that is. Sorry.
See? You don't know who that is.
Hmm.
Who is Yehosheva?
No idea.
She is Yehoash. There was one queen of Israel, of Yehudah. Her name, what was her name? Atalia. She
Okay.
killed all of her children and killed everybody, including all her
Oh, yeah,
grandchildren.
not a good
But she couldn't find this one because she was hidden. The baby was hidden,
Yehoiada.
Yehoash, by Yehosheva, his aunt.
Right.
His aunt took him, chapter 12 of Kings 2. His aunt took him and hid him in the temple by a priest whose name was, the king's name, he was 7 years old, and his name was Yehoash. Yehoash, Yud Kei Vav. It's right, cousin. Yehoash. You with me?
Yeah.
His aunt's name was Yehosheva. And the priest who hid them, who was the only straight priest there was in Jerusalem, his name was Yehoiada. Do you think something is being hinted to, Ron? Yehoash the king, Yehosheva the aunt, and Yehoiada the priest. You know how many people pick up on that?
Ish.
Ish, I guess. Yeah. But nobody knows it. Nobody realizes that, right?
Right.
So there are three Shevat girls.
No, they don't think it's significant.
No, they didn't even realize. They didn't realize who you're that. They didn't realize what you're being told. So Yehosheva, the three Shevat girls are daughter, a wife of the high priest, daughter of the political leader of the country, because Nahshon is the Nasi of Yehudah, right? He's the Yehudah. He's the leader of the tribes.
Okay.
When the Nesi'im offer on day one, it's Nahshon ben Aminadav of Yehudah offers. You know, when they do the 12 offerings repeated in Bimidbar. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So his father is Aminadav. Well, you don't become the political leader. He was a prince. When she's referred to as Elisheva, Bat Aminadav, Ahot Nahshon, sister of Nahshon, princess Nahshon, the prince. Father is the leader of the tribe, of course. He takes over after his father. So Aharon marries the political leader.
Right.
We said this in the past. Who does Moshe marry? His brother. Who does Aharon's brother Moshe? Who does he marry? It doesn't matter the political leader of Israel, who is
another priest.
A priest.
Right, not political.
He marries the high priest, the priest of Midian. He's not even Jewish, but he's spiritual. He's a priest. So the high priest doesn't marry a priest.
And Yosef,
He marries the political leader's daughter.
for him only.
And Yosef is also priest, right?
Yep.
Right? Right? But whereas Moshe marries the priest's daughter, and he's from Midian, he's not even from Israel.
Right.
But Hadon marries the political leader's daughter, right? And Nashon's sister. That's why it goes out to say Nashon's sister. She's a princess. So that's one Sheva girl. Her name is my God of seven, Elisheva. The next one is not the daughter of the political leader, but is the wife of the king. Can't get bigger political leader than David. And her name is daughter of seven. The next one time you're going to hear about a seven girl is going to be Yehosheva, who is the aunt of the king, right? The king who died, right? And her mother, and now she saves the child. She's a heroine. Her name is Yehosheva. She has it all right. They hide the child. She lives in the temple grounds, hidden in one of the places. No one knows that they're there. She takes care of the child, brings him up, and then they make him king. Yehoiada starts a rebellion with the guard, her guard, the palace guard, and they throw her out. She's a Italian, right?
Did they talk about who the aunt is married to? Who
No, nothing.
No.
You just know aunt, right? That's what we know. So it's very interesting that Eliam, therefore now when you know the parentage, you see that it tells you that her father was Eliam, and her name is Bathsheba, and the prior Sheva girl was called Eli Sheva, whose father was Aminadab. It sounds like it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't miss that it's a combination of both. And then, of course, the thing that separates the heroine who saves the king, her name is Yehosheva. She's got it all correct. She represents, in other words, the right attitude, right? She represents proper outlook, proper everything. Everything is right about her, so to speak.
And that's later.
Yeah.
Much later. Yeah, you're talking about 150 years before the destruction of Yehuda. So if you say it's 586, let's say it's 200 years, whatever, right? Something like that.
After David and everything.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about now that you have this, let's talk about Shlomo. Let's see, is it worth? We've talked about the rise. Solomon rises to power. We know how he rises to power. He knocks off all, the Godfather story, right? It was based on that. You all know it. Remember, David tells him, "Don't forget, you're Hacham." It's the first time you hear the term Hacham used with him, right? He uses that term, and he tells him, "You know how to do it, and take care of them all." And of course, we know that he does, but he goes much further than that. Let's see if I can get to the right page here. He goes much further than that because he kills his own brother. That's what we talked about till now, right?
Fredo.
Huh?
Fredo.
He kills Fredo, right? Exactly. Well, it's the same story. He copied it all the way. All right. Oh, we have Jonathan here also. How you doing, Jonathan? Just saying hello. He's not even there. Okay. Let's now go to the beginning.
I'm here. Thank you. All good.
Oh, okay. Very good. Okay. Did you know about the 3 Sheva girls?
I just signed on, but I know that
Yeah,
Elisheva, Batsheva, and who's the third one?
Yehoshua.
I don't know that one now.
Yeah, right. I wish you would have heard. So I'll tell it to you one time. You'll ask me.
Reporter.
We're gonna start now. Yeah, can you see the screen? I'm assuming if I don't hear from you, you see the wisdom of Solomon clearly over there?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great. By far the most defining characteristic of Solomon, especially as he has been immortalized by both the Bible and later literature and legend, is his fabled wisdom. In our analysis of Psalm 49, we show how the psalmist refers to this wisdom with an ironic tone, implying that true wisdom could be found in the psalm as a contrast to the failed wisdom that informed Solomon's decisions as a leader. A close reading of the book of Kings shows, did I go too far? Sorry. I don't usually do this, so. Just 1 minute. I'm sorry, guys. Just 1 minute. Okay, that shows that the depiction of Solomon therein is actually full of a similarly subtle critique. Solomon's wisdom, such as it was, is emphasized in ways that make his ultimate folly all the more flagrant. His ultimate folly. So when you look like it's saying that he's, you got it in the book? You got the page?
Yep.
Yeah. If anybody has the book in their house, they can look at the book if they don't want to look at the screen. It's in Torat Moshe, page
48.
48, the Jubilee book from the Rab. If you have it, you can look at it.
Now we're on the top of 49.
The first reference to Solomon's wisdom, as noted above, is in David's deathbed instructions. Solomon was told to act, quote, in accordance with his wisdom, and was expected to know what to do in order to have Shimei executed, because you're a wise man. It should not be shocking to see that in the context of the monarchy, wisdom is a value-neutral quality. Very, very important, Ronnie. You know what I mean by value-neutral quality? Wisdom, it's value-neutral. Doesn't mean anything about ethics. It's just wisdom. It's a value that's neutral, right? That's why it's called a value neutral quality. It is only the moralistic language of the prophets, right? And the wisdom literature that marries wisdom to ethics. Saying that a person is wise has nothing to do with being ethical. You could be wise, right? Who could be wise, Morris?
Anyone?
The Godfather.
Bilam?
Yes.
Bilam, anybody, right? You could be wise. You could be very smart. You could be brilliant. You could be a genius, right? It's value neutral, right? When it's put together, right? When it comes together with moralistic language of the Nevi'im and the wisdom literature that marries wisdom to ethics, then it becomes something special. Good?
Yeah.
In recounting the deeds of clever political operatives, we see little to associate them with ethical behavior. See them making all these brilliant moves, but it doesn't have anything to do with ethics, right? Previous individuals called Hacham, wise, include the likes of Yehonadab, son of Shimei, who tutored Amnon how to rape Tamar in 2 Samuel 12, right? So, not the nicest guy in the world. You know, I need my mouse. This is driving me nuts. Amnon had to rape Tamar. So he's a Hacham, right? He's called Hacham. Well, what does he do? He's a lowlife of the first order, right? And Ahitophel, who was counsel to the chief counsel to the president, chief counsel to the king over there, smartest guy in the country, who counseled Absalom to sleep with his father's concubines and attempt to kill him as quickly as possible. That's in 2 Samuel 16:17.
Also known as Shlomo's great grandfather.
Very good.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
What was that?
Ahitophel, counsel to the king, chief counsel to the king,
Bathsheba's grandpa?
Bathsheba's grandpa, right? Her father is Eliam, and he's the son of Ahitophel. Therefore, this Ahitophel guy, who was a genius, right? Smartest guy, there was a saying in Israel, his word is like God's word. If he says something, boy, it's going to happen. He's really sharp. So he fails and he commits suicide when he's caught trying to go after David, advising
If he doesn't
Absalom.
fail, they don't listen to him.
They don't listen to him by simple quirk of circumstances that at the last minute he's not listened to. And he realizes that now they know he turned on David and he's going to be killed. So he goes and he commits suicide. Fact of the matter is, with all his cunning, his granddaughter becomes queen of Israel. Right? So how you doing, Sam? Good to see you. So it's interesting to note that she comes from a line when we see Bathsheba, who looks like a bit of I write about this up until now, and I've said this to you before. I think, Sammy, you'll remember me saying this, that she comes from the most brilliant family, right? Her breeding is not from the sharpest in the country. So she's super, super smart. So when we look at her like some Hazit case, right, and so on and so forth, we're making a big mistake. Okay. So now, so that's the first thing. The next time Solomon's wisdom is mentioned is in the first of Solomon's dreams, examined above, after which it is showcased by the famous trial of two prostitutes, each claiming to be the mother of the same living child. We shall examine this narrative at the end of this section, as there is far more to it than meets the eye. Now, I want to do the reason that I spoke with Morris. The reason we're doing this is because it was the Haftarah of this past Shabbat. And the next time it'll be the Haftarah. Let's see if you guys who are listening know. Sammy or Jonathan or who else is here? Yorisha, Raquel, right? I don't think there's anybody else. Do any of you have a guess when the next time we read that Haftarah is?
Zero.
No, 17 years will be the next time you have the opportunity to read that, because it always lands on Hanukkah, that Shabbat, either the first one or the second one. And on Hanukkah, you don't read the story of the two prostitutes with the baby, splitting the baby. You read the Hanukkah Haftarah. So the next time you have a Shabbat where it's not Hanukkah, at this time is in 17 years. So I thought it'd be a good idea for us to talk about it. Okay, Solomon is one of the few characters described as being possessed of both Chokhmah and Tibunah, wisdom and discernment. As we noted in commenting on Psalm 49, I'm going to skip that. It says he was one of the most brilliant people in the world, and I'm going to skip all of that right now because there's no time. The most famous depiction of Solomon's wisdom is in the text is actually the ultimate criticism of his eventual descent into folly. After Solomon asks for God for wisdom in a dream, and God grants his wish, that wisdom is put to the test in what becomes the first public display of the new king's extraordinary judgment. 1 Kings 3:16-28 depicts a seemingly irresolvable she said dispute and Solomon's ingenious solution. We're going to read it real fast. So that's the Haftarah, what we're going to read now. It's short, it's 13 verses, and we'll read it. By the way, immediately before this trial, right before it is connected, the previous word is to the story of him having a dream in Giv'on, where he offers 1,000 sacrifices. And I think I've mentioned to you in the past, I think so, that what's he doing in Giv'on? Giv'on are the lowlifes of they're the lowlifes, right? They're the ones that are going to ask for the 7 children, the ethnic, when David is going to offer reparations to them for doing, because Shaul did ethnic cleansing. He said, they say, okay, we want 7 kids from Shaul to be slaughtered. And David shakes on the deal, and it's very, very bad. And they're lowlifes, and they're connected to Shechem in the story with the rape of Dinah, right? And so on and so forth. So, because they're Hivim, and that's in the Gibeon area. So he goes there to offer sacrifices. What's he doing in Gibeon? In the dream we analyzed before this. It's worthwhile if one time we'll get together and analyze that dream that he has. That dream leads directly in that dream. After God tells him, okay, you didn't ask for this, you didn't ask for this, I'm going to give you wealth and so on and so forth. We ask a question over there, give him wealth, he had wealth. Give him long, everything he asked, he didn't ask for, he already had, right? So very important to know. At that juncture, as, right? In other words, connecting, when you say as, right? Later, or as, then, Nashim 2 prostitutes came to El HaMelech v'ta'amona lefanav, and they stand before him. So, right away, when you see that story, it's a setup that you should ask a question. When you say 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him, what do you note about that? Anybody? Well, exactly. If you didn't hear what Ronnie said, he said, how the heck do 2 prostitutes get to have an audience with the king? It's weird that if 2 prostitutes have a problem and they go to court, they don't get the king to be the presiding judge, correct? Who gets to be the presiding judge?
Anybody else?
Anybody else. Very good. And in the ancient world, if anyone at all.
Right.
2 prostitutes, 2 zonot, 2 women, 2 prostitutes, right? So it opens up on the thing of, oh, here he is giving them an opportunity, right? He'll judge, showing himself to be very magnanimous, right? And being involved. And one of the women say, Bi Adoni, please, my lord. This woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house. On the 3rd day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth. And we were together in Zad Itano Bayit. There was no stranger with us in the house. No one else. We were alone. Zad is like a, even though it says no one else is with us, the word Zad, right, means there's no, from the word Zad, strange, right? No stranger. In the house, we were the only 2 in the house when we gave birth. And during the night, this woman's child died. Right, Laila Asher Shachta Alav. On the child died because she lay on it. She smothered the child at night. Good. She got up in the middle of the night. She took my son from me, and your maidservant, she's referring to herself, was sleeping. Right, and she put him in her bosom. And her dead son, she put in my bosom. And I got up in the morning to nurse my son. And he was dead. And I looked by Boket in the morning. And when I looked, in other words, more closely, right? When I looked at him closely in the morning, it was not the son I had born. And the other woman says, Lo, no. My son is the living one, and yours is the dead one. And the other one says, Lo, no. your son is the dead one. Ubani hai, and my son is the living one. And they went on arguing before the king, right? That's a translation is not a word for it. And they spoke before the king. And the king said, this one says, the dead boy is yours and mine is the living one. And the other one says, no, yours is, by the way, the English is missing words.
That's what it Ronnie was.
And that book is published.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just wanted to.
No, your son is the dead one. Mine is the living one. And the king said, get me a sword. And they bring a sword. By the way, they bring the sword before the king. Just to tell you about editing, this was edited 3 billion times. Okay? Okay? How many times it was edited? And how many times, right? No, this is a good one. This is nothing. So you don't have the English, okay, big deal. All right, I'll take it. And the king said, cut the living child, l'shnaim, into 2 parts. Give 1 half and the other 1 half. Ha'isha. 1 second. 1 second. I hate this. Sorry. I don't know how to do this now. Right? And the woman whose son was alive told the king, because her compassion for her son she was overcome with compassion, right? Nichmeru rahameha al bina, because that word nichmeru, she was overcome with rahamim for her son, and she says, Biaduni, please, tenu la etayalud.
They pointed out in the chat this week that word nichmeru comes up by Yosef.
You know that from me.
Oh, okay.
It's
Wasn't
in
sure
the
if
book.
you had it in.
Of course. That's the final words of this article.
Oh, very good.
Right. Give her, who said it? Had to be Ronnie Mizrahi.
No,
Because
somebody
nobody
else,
knows that
or-
unless they read the article. Yeah. Give her the child, right? A hide that's alive, and don't kill him. Zota made it, and the other one says, Gamli Gamlach. No, she says, it's not yours, not mine. Loye, it's not going to be the case. Gezoru, cut it. Right? That's the other one says, cut it. Ve'ana melech, and the king says, Ve'yomer tenula eteyalud, give her the high living child, and don't kill him. He's the mother. Ingenious, right? And then the trial is over, and there's a concluding statement after the trial. All of Israel hears the judgment that he rendered. And they were in awe because of the king. They saw that he possessed divine wisdom to do justice. Okay? Famous case. And this is like the most famous story that everybody in the world knows about. And we're going to analyze this dream now and see where it goes.
So do you point out that there's a Chokhmat Elohim Berkirbo versus Paro says, what does he say? Ruach Elohim? Oh, yeah, okay.
It's there's a section in here. I see you never read this article.
I did. It was so good. I read it in one shot, all 100 pages.
And you don't remember a word because there's a whole thing about Yosef and
I know there's a comparison, that's why I'm
Sure.
asking if it's in.
Everything is gonna come up in there about this. There's much more to this, so it's a very short story, correct? Let's give this out for you guys. Here's one for you. I'll try and put on the screen for the Zoom people. Here's one for you. And for the Zoom people, I'll try and put it, but let's read for a second. There is much more to this short 13-verse account than immediately meets the eye. Much of it refers back to the account of David and Bathsheba through links of language. Nobody knows this either. The first woman's testimony introduced with, "Oh my Lord, I and this woman live in one house," parallels the opening words of the parable of Nathan, which begins, you remember Nathan's story, what he tells David? Two men lived in a city. Shaim and Hashim Hayu Be'erahat. You don't know the story about the lamb? With David? Nobody? Anybody?
This is-
Morris?
this
The
is-
famous story when he comes to tell him about the fact that he committed adultery.
Right,
He
yeah.
tells him a story about a lamb, right? You all know that story. He tells him he was a zillionaire and had that 10,000 head of cattle, and this guy had this little lamb and he took care of it and he slept with it and he put it right and so on, and he put it in his behekor, right? Right? You remember? Right. So right. So Shnein Hashim Hayu Be'erahat. They each give birth 3 days apart. Va'eled ma b'bayit v'hi b'yom hashlishi l'ti. Obviously, the birth of a son, actually 2 sons, one alive and one dead, is a key element of both narratives. For instance, the end of the first section of David and Bathsheba narrative prior to Nathan's rebuke concludes Vatelid lo ben, and she bore him a son. While following the death of that child, the second section concludes with Vatelid ben, namely Solomon. Right? There's a dead son and a living son. According to the first woman, the second woman's baby. I touched the screen. I'm telling you, I need a mouse. I don't know how to work this. You'll never find it. Right. Oh my God. I'm sorry, guys, who are watching this. I'm sorry. According to the first woman, the second woman's baby died because she lay on it. Moreover, according to her account, the bereaved mother rose in the middle of the night, reminiscent of the opening words giving the setting of David's great sin. Samuel 11:2. She proceeded to, quote, "take my son from me as I slept and lay it in her bosom and lay her dead son in my bosom. Vatikah et beni me'etzli v'amatcha yeshena v'tashkibeu b'cheka et benahamet hishkiva b'cheki." This is an extremely infrequent term and cannot be found, right? She shachva behekor, shachva beheki, right? Right? This language again brings to mind several elements of David and Bathsheba. First, Vaishkab Vekaheha, he took her, Vatabor Elav, and she came to him, Vaishkav Yima, and he lay with her. When he took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Second, in Nathan's parable, when the rich man, quote, took the lamb of the poor man, the latter is a parallel not only of language, but also of content. The prostitute who switches her child for that of her housemaid, attempting to deprive the other mother of her son by this deception, parallels the man who takes his neighbor's lamb instead of his own. Outside the realm of parable, David too attempted to pass off his child as someone else's. The child that eventually would be the dead one. Right? Eventually, that'll be the dead one. The child who died because of his, quote, laying with, end quote, another man's wife, Vaishkav Imah, is alluded to by the manner of the baby's death in the prostitute's testimony. Asher shahva alav. She lay on the child. How does she know when she gives the testimony, Ronnie, that she was sleeping while I was sleeping, she had the baby, and she lied? How does she know that?
Yeah.
She can't know that. It's an assumption, right? She can't know anything about what happened in the middle of the night when they were both sleeping. When she says it over to the king, she says a seemingly irrelevant detail in the first woman's testimony, right? Finally, the reference to the child sleeping in her bosom also comes right out of Nathan's parable, as well as his nimshal. His nimshal means the moral of the story. The stolen lamb had slept in the poor man's bosom, right? It was a very strange thing when you read it in the other stories. Oh, he would keep the lamb in his bosom, like this. He would hug the lamb. It was his buddy. He was poor. He had nothing in his life. It was a lamb, right? When you read it. And the prophet's rebuke mentions that God had given David wives of his own in his bosom, right? When he rips them. Thus, taking the sleeping child from out of a victim's bosom mirrors the rich man's theft of the lamb and David's theft of Uriah's wife. In the first woman's testimony, she rises in the morning, va'akumba bokid, opposite her opponent, who rose in the night, atakom betoch halayla, to steal her child. And the opposite of David, who rose in the evening. At the outset of the narrative in which he stole Uriah's wife. Are you seeing all of this? I'm going fast and I'm not going to, it all speaks for itself. Yes, Joey, you with me? I hope you folks are all listening with me while you're reading. Her purpose was to nurse her son, emphasizing her maternal qualities. She found the baby dead, but examining it more closely, found that it was not the son to whom she had given birth. The other woman denies her account in full, stating only that my son is the living one and yours is the dead. Solomon observes the conundrum, then proposes a solution through a clever subterfuge. Calling for a sword to be brought in, he calls for the child to be cut in half and divided equitably between the two claimants. The true mother, whichever she is, speaks, quote, because mercy burned within her for her son. And she begs, oh my Lord, give the living child to her, but surely do not kill him. Opening, beseeching words, bi'aduni, which also opened the first woman's testimony, as well as the usual turn of phrase regarding her mercy, are a fascinating point of intertextuality to which we shall return. Remember, bi'aduni are the opening words of the trial.
Yeah.
Yes, Ronnie, you see that it's the opening words of the trial?
Yeah.
Bi'aduni. The crass acceptance of the verdict by the impostor tips her hand. Solomon commands that the child not be killed, as the true mother had begged, and has the living child returned to her. All the nation hears of Solomon's brilliant judgment and is awed that, quote, the wisdom of God was within him to do judgment. Beneath the surface of this famous judgment lies an extraordinarily harsh assessment of Solomon's wisdom. Nobody has ever written what I just now said in that sentence, ever. I want you to know, honestly, for 2,500 years, no one, it's beneath the surface. I'm going to repeat it so you get it. Beneath the surface of this famous judgment lies an extraordinarily harsh assessment of Solomon's wisdom. The wise and discerning judge who recognizes that a true parent would never allow her child to be cut in two is precisely the king who caused his kingdom to eventually be divided, resulting in the northern and southern kingdoms never to be reunited. Though he recognizes the maternal instinct of the prostitute, who would sooner be deprived of her own child than see any harm come to him as parent to the nation, Solomon ultimately caused precisely the division that the other prostitute accepted as fair. It is noteworthy that Solomon is never named in this narrative. Where's his name? Look at the story.
Yeah, Ramev.
He is merely called the king said. The king said, the king said, right? This is because his judgment is a verdict concerning all kings. Every king should be a proper parent to the nation, willing to sacrifice personal happiness for the good of his quote unquote children. In abstract, his judgment was sound, so wise that it was recognized as divinely inspired. In practice, he failed to follow his own wisdom. Like his father before him, Solomon was the unknowing subject of a parable in the text, and for all his wisdom and discernment, provided his own condemnation.
Oh,
Do you see how both of them provided their own condemnation? What happened after,
is that a double
huh?
condemnation?
What,
No.
what'd you say? Condemnation? Oh, it's a double entendre. Yeah, condemnation, that's what you mean, right? Yeah. How did David, when he hears the story about the lamb, when Nathan comes to him, tells him, I have a story for you, look what happened, there was this guy, and he tells him the story, and he was asked, oh, his whole life, that little lamb. And he had 10,000 head of cattle. He takes the guy and he kills it so he could serve the guy who came to town to have some lamb chops. So David, you remember what David says? He should die. Right? He goes to this, he should die, that guy. Of course, he doesn't mean die because you kill a guy for killing a lamb. And he says, okay, he has to pay 3 and 4 and pay him right, right? But he condemns him. So he goes, you're the guy. Right. So he gave judgment on himself, correct?
Mhm.
David made judgment on himself. You see, he condemns himself.
Right.
Not knowing that he's condemning himself. This story is Solomon condemning himself.
Before he does it.
No, he condemns himself. He says, cut the baby in half. A mother would never allow that. He did.
So doesn't that happen later? It happens later. Yes, right.
He's
Yeah.
doing it. It's happening as he's speaking. The North is already, it didn't happen overnight.
Right.
After he died, the North comes and said, done. We've had it with your father. He did a number on us, took advantage of us, wages, everything, enslaved us. We were working like animals while you're sitting there on your ivory towers having a good time. Right? So that, and who do they bring? Ahab. Yeah, I mean, Yeroboam, the worst, right? Yeroboam, and then Navi comes in between and stops the war, which was, they were coming to clash, and he stops it at the last minute, right? But the nation stays divided forever after that. So his judgment is a condemnation. He's condemning himself, because who is he in the story? He's the mother that said, cut him. He's looking at, oh, woman, a mother would never do that to her child.
One of the mothers.
Right.
I said, he's the mother that says, cut him.
Which mother is he? The mother that
No,
decided
could have been either one, in other words.
he had the opportunity.
Oh, of course, he had the opportunity to be the good one, right? But he condemns that woman. He says, that's not the mother of the child. Well, you're not the king of the nation. You're not the king of the nation. The mother of the real child would never she'll sacrifice her child to keep it alive. Sacrifice having him. She'll watch the other mother. Remember, she's willing to watch the other mother. What? Live in the town with her. See her son and see her as the son of that lowlife for the rest of her life.
Right.
What a sacrifice, no joke?
Ridiculous.
Unbelievable sacrifice. But that's what a mother would do to keep her son alive.
Right.
She'll even watch him grow up, watch everything go on, but she keeps him alive. Right? In other words, she'll sacrifice the ultimate sacrifice. right?
You could also say it's even harsher that they're describing these two women as prostitutes. If you're really comparing him to a prostitute.
You heard what
You
Sammy said?
You could have done without the prostitute level of detail. It could have just been two women. You're saying something even worse by
Right,
thinking, yeah,
right. Why did they have to be prostitutes?
right.
Right.
That's also probably symbolic of the.
That's symbolic of something that we have to think about. Why did the story have to present two prostitutes? We had to have somebody who doesn't have a husband. Two women who the only ones that can present the case are the women. You have to keep that in mind. We have to have a case where two women come and are pregnant and there's no father on
Okay.
the scene, right? So you got to keep that in mind, right? We have to have two women and they're alone and so on and so forth. But Sammy, I think you have to keep it in mind anyway, in spite of that, right? So now he condemned himself.
The two women, so.
Everybody, over here, nobody has a name.
But as they tell the story, you almost don't know who's saying what.
That's all we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
No, you don't know who's who.
Which, of those two women.
Who of it's someone starts speaking. I'm going to talk about it right now.
Right.
In 1 second. 1 second. Good observation. For those of you online, Joey was pointing out that in the story, when you read it, who's who? And when the trial starts, who's talking? It says one woman. Which woman?
Right.
Who's so you don't know? This is not a videotape.
No, you can read the story. You don't even know if it's the real mother
Original,
talking.
but-
You know
Well,
what I just said.
Yeah,
So you just said.
You can read it both ways.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
tend to think that it's the real mother
Really?
that starts.
You
but-
that's
I
what
was-
you
I was
think.
thinking that you hear near the end, but then the final one that you really don't see is in Chav Zayin. When then it says, "Vayana melech hayomet nula et hayadu achaya v'amet v'ot mitzvot."
But you don't know.
You don't know who gave it to.
No, you don't know anything.
Right.
No, you only know
don't
that.
who he started with.
You only know he gave it to the one that said, "Give her the child."
Right.
That's what you know. Over there, you know that's the mother. The one that said the words, "Give her the child," is the true mother. But you don't know if she spoke first in the trial or second, and we'll do that in a minute. Well, right now, it's happening in a sec. Give us a second. Right? So I want to David sent Uriah to Joab, naively holding his own death warrant, like a sheep to the slaughter, to borrow an image from Nathan's parable. However, in an irony of the text, when he pronounces the rich man worthy of death, ben mavet, he was condemning himself just as unknowingly. Later on, right? He sends Uriah to his death he sends a message. He says, "Carry this message, give it to you. Let's kill him." Right? It's a very interesting turn of events. He now, when he says the guy should die, ben mavet, he's saying it about himself. He's condemning himself, just like Uriah was condemned when he carried. Now he condemns himself to be the one. Of course, there's no real death. Later on, as the woman of Tekoa brought Jacob's case for the return of Absalom to David, unwittingly setting off a chain of events that would bring about David's measure for measure retribution, David again pronounced the verdict, naive of the fact that it was his own. This verdict, interestingly enough, was in response to a plea of clemency summarized that there were two sons. Now there is only one. Can it be justified to kill the second? If you don't know that story, this won't help, but we're not going to spend time in it. Solomon faces his own version of the same question, and like his father, pronounces a verdict that is really about himself. The division of the kingdom into the wayward northern kingdom of Israel and the still troubled southern kingdom of Judah was the ultimate failure of Solomon's reign. It is what likens him to the impostor, not a real parent to the nation. He would see it split. That a harlot proves more, now Sammy, listening? That a harlot proves more capable than him of not only recognizing this, but actualizing it is a damning criticism. a prostitute, right? Right? Is capable, is a damning criticism. The quote, the king, end quote, since Solomon's name is kept out of the narrative, emphasizing that the metaphor can and should be generalized, proves inferior to the truthful harlot. In fact, the use of harlot is not just a necessary plot device, you're listening, Sam, but a further criticism, as ultimately Solomon's strain is the consequence of his love for foreign women, much as his father's great failure was the product of unbridled lust. Did you get that, Sam? I see you nodding. It's a little tiny box on my screen.
Yes.
Pretty amazing. When I wrote this, you know what I was afraid of?
A lot of things.
I was afraid to come and stone the house, right? So, but am I wrong? Am I wrong? I'm not wrong, right? A criticism as ultimately Solomon's strain is the consequence of his love for flesh. It says he married, right, 700 and 300 concubines, and they took him away, and he brought in Avodah Zarah, right? He brings in idolatry into Israel, right?
I'll say it this way. He may have slept with as many women as prostitutes sleep with men.
There you go. There you go.
He got around.
I got that.
He had, in other words, 1,000 G's. A prostitute sleep, that's her job. So she does. She's sleeping all the time, right? As the years go by, he's saying, 1,000. So, right? So saying, yeah, 700 and 300. Yeah. It says 1,000, meaning untold, right?
Right.
So over the top, right? So very well said, Sammy. I should have stuck that in a footnote. Was deprived of unbridled lust. So, but David also was a problem, right? The whole Uriah story comes from unbridled lust. He uncontrolled, right? It is an interesting literary exercise to look now. This is what I wanted to do tonight. It's already 8:40. Let's see if we can do this now or next week. We'll see. It is an interesting literary exercise to look more deeply at the details given in this case to try and arrive at a judgment. We find that the text plants equal evidence in favor of each woman's claim, highlighting that this case is fully unsolvable without wisdom from God. The Chochmat Elohim, the people recognized in Solomon as the narrative, concludes, right? Impossible, right? Brilliant, genius. Afterwards, we shall find that much of the above analysis is strengthened by structural features of the narrative. Remember that the narrative is divided into two parts. The two women, called only the one woman, here you go, Joe, right? The one woman, and quote, the other woman, present their claims in the first part, while in the second part, women are identified as the real mother and the false mother. There is no obvious way, it's italicized, so that emphasis, there is no obvious way to identify the women in the first half with their descriptions in the second half. I'm telling you that before you do it. You could argue with me in a minute. I say there's no way.
But
As
the
we
text tells you that the real
Later.
mother said this.
Yeah, later.
When?
I just said this, it's divided into two parts. The case is presented, one woman, the other woman.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
All that woman said this, the other one,
Yeah.
she said. Okay, then it comes time. The true mother, which one was that? Right? Which one was that? Could have been the first woman. No, you're a liar. That's the true mother.
Both ways.
Right. As we shall see, the subtle clues supporting each side are themselves. The clues are ambiguous. To begin with, we are told that the two women, harlots, at that, came and stood before the king. Is either likely to be more trustworthy than the other? To start, Sammy, two prostitutes, you trust one than the other? It would be difficult for a, quote, character witness to say anything that defends or condemns one and not the other. You like that? You can't. I really like putting that in. Can you bring a character witness for a prostitute? No, right? Still, it is noteworthy that members of the lowest social stratum stand before the king himself in judgment. Ronnie, what we spoke about before. This fact is a mark of what it looks like when true justice prevails. Why did it do that? When true justice prevails. The first one begins with the polite term biaduni. But anyone standing before the king and hoping to make a case would begin with honorifics, right? Who said, how do you start? Biaduni, right? Notably, it is the true mother who says, Bi Adoni in verse 26. Now, if I have the
What makes you say that?
look at verse
Oh,
26.
26.
After he said he says split the baby in verse 26.
Yeah.
If you guys who are on internet can go look back at verse 20 at the story. There's only 13 verses. Look at verse 26. He says, split the right, give her right. She says, Biaduni tunula tayalud, give her the child, right? That person who's speaking is the true mother. She says Biaduni, does she not? Joey?
Yes.
Ronnie? The trial opened up on the words. First words of the trial were Bi Adoni. First words, right, Ronnie? You have the chart in front of you, Ronnie. You could look at it. You can look over here. Here's Bi Adoni. You see it? Let me see if I could open it for the people on the internet. Just 1 minute. If I can, it'll be very nice. Here we go. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this for you guys, but I'm going to try. Sammy, I'll use you because I see the picture of you. You see Biaduni, where I'm pointing over here, Sam?
Yeah, it's green.
Yeah, those are the opening words of the child. Biaduni, and then she starts. And etc., etc., etc. Correct?
Yeah.
Right? If you'll notice over here where it says her compassion overwhelms her, and she says, Biaduni tunula tayalud, give her the child that's alive. And don't kill him. So, of course, that Biaduni is being said by the true mother, correct, Joe?
Yeah.
She's the one. We now know that the words Biaduni.
Make that as something.
So I don't know.
It is the fact. No, it's not an
Why
assumption.
did they say what?
I don't know if we're gonna get to.
No. I'm only saying that the second Biaduni is being said by the true mother, of course.
Right.
The first Biaduni is being said by, who knows?
Right.
The false mother or the
Yeah.
true mother. Someone starts talking, we don't know.
I don't know
So
if we're gonna get to it.
10 years ago, I went like this. Since it says Biaduni over here,
Right.
and it opens with Biaduni, is it telling you that really the first person who started talking was the true mother? So we went like this when I was working on it. Sounds good, but you can't draw any conclusion. You know nothing.
Sounds pretty
It
good.
sounds nice. It Biaduni,
I mean, that's also the way
that's the way you talk.
No, the way that you naturally read the story is that it's the real mother that opens up.
Okay, so let's read.
It's also the
No,
first
it's
one.
just-
It's also the first one in each section. The first person says Biaduni, and the first person says Biaduni in the second one. So it draws it to it, but it's not a.
Okay,
It's not.
it's not a lock
It's
by
not
any
slammed
means.
dunk.
Okay. But it's inconclusive.
We should
Verse
just make the
19.
point, because you're not gonna get to it, that Yehuda opens up his
Biaduni.
yeah, what do you call that? His whatever you call that. He's going to open up his words to Yosef.
When he
to-
makes the plea to
the
take
plea, the
him,
plea.
right?
to get Binyamin,
Right.
Biadoni is the opening.
But that's the way you talk. Honorifics, you say
Okay.
Biadoni.
Okay. How often does it come up in the Tanakh?
Oh,
Okay.
probably, you could look it up. I
Okay.
bet you quite a few
Okay.
times.
But it's worthwhile to note it.
Okay. Verse 19 includes a speculative statement. The first woman claims that her rival's child died in the night because she laid upon it. By her own account, she was asleep when this occurred. So it is either conjecture on her part, she is an honest plaintiff, or fabrication, if she is the lying mother. Perhaps this is a point against her. On the other hand, as we have observed, a certain intertextual significance to the statement Asher Shachva Alav, referring to prior narratives, perhaps the truth of the metaphor implies the truth of her statement. This extraneous detail could be a point for or against her. You see what I'm doing here now, Sammy, and the rest of you are listening? I'm showing you how, as hard as you're going to try to say who was saying what, you're not going to succeed. ותקום בתוך הלילה, ותיקח בנה מאצלי ועמדך ישנה ותשקיע בחלקה ואת בנה הימה תשקיע בהקיא. This verse contains the accusation. The other one took her son as she slept and switched them. As before, the observed intertextual nature of the alleged crime, harking back to the parable of Nathan and David's crime against Uriah, might indicate the truth of the statement. Or maybe not. The text's use of metaphor and verbal linkages is not dependent on the honesty of the character in whose mouth they are placed, after all. Right? Next. ואקום בבוקר להניק את בני, בני מת, אתבונן עליו בבוקר, ולא היה בני אשר ילדתי. This verse ends her introductory claim. She got up to nurse her child and saw that it was dead. The nursing detail emphasizes her maternal qualities. Then she looked more closely at it, as a real mother would, perhaps. She can tell it is not the child I gave birth to. This is the substance of her claim. The dead child is not the one she birthed. The other woman's testimony, given prior to the second after the trial, where they're identified, is limited to a complete denial. No, my child is the living one and yours is the dead one. In the same verse, the counter rebuttal is given symmetrically. No, your child is the dead one and mine is the living one. It is possible to make a weak argument in favor of woman number 2 here. Her rebuttal consists of the flat denial. No, my child is the living one. Stated before, your child is the dead one. This is consistent with the character of the real mother in the second half of the narrative. Her focus is on the living child, her child. My child is the living one. She is even willing to let it be someone else's, but it must be living. Did I make a good case?
Yep.
This is Gemara now. Now watch this. On the other hand, the imposter accepts Solomon's judgment. She views it as fair. No one will have a living child. The goal at that point of the case is simply for the other woman to be deprived. Your child is dead. This is consistent with the order of claims of woman number 1 in the counter rebuttal. No, your child is a dead one and mine is the living one. Of course, this could be making more of the specific order of claims than justifiable. Perhaps this is simply the natural sequence of arguments. X, not Y, rejected and counted with Y, not X. Everybody still with me? Sammy, you liking the analysis?
Very much so.
It's good, no? It's good. Okay, the Torah is law, keep it etc. The above concludes the first half in which initial claims are presented. In the next verse, Solomon states what we should all be thinking. This case is unsolvable. One says the living child is hers, the dead one is her rival's, the other says the reverse. Etc., etc. At this point, like Solomon, we have very little to go on. Solomon, however, uses his understanding of human nature and how a true parent would place mercy above some sick caricature of fairness. right? Of course. He has his servants bring him a sword to cut this Gordian knot. Everybody know what a Gordian knot is? You do?
Yeah,
I do not.
the Gordian knot is the knot that can't be unraveled in mythology.
Right.
It's like the unbreakable knot.
The Gordian knot. You can't, right? This is a Gordian knot, right? For the duration of the narrative, the woman identified as the real mother and the imposter, rather than simply being the first woman and the other woman. As noted, we have little to identify these labels from the first and second half appropriately. The honest mother says Biaduni, which opened up the claim of the number one, but perhaps they both speak that way. Notably, when she says, quote, give her the living child and surely do not kill him, she too unknowingly gives the verdict. Solomon echoes her words and says, give her the real mother, the living child, and surely do not kill him. Having looked more closely at the details, we see very small, barely admissible evidence to identify the women in the text. Does structural analysis shed any light? Right? Structural analysis. As it turns out, it is equally ambivalent. Sorry, I did an amazing structural analysis of this thing, and it doesn't show up anything. The details that emerge from this analysis are predicated on the fact that this narrative is self-contained. Like a psalm, an easily identifiable narrative with clear parameters is subject to the same type of structural analysis. For instance, the trial can be broken down into dialogue and narrative, and broken down further into the words of woman number one and woman number two, and Solomon, or honest mother, imposter, and Solomon. Indeed, it is helpful to proceed under the assumption of uncertainty. Word counts within the dialogue should be conducted twice, one based on the identification of honest mother, woman number one, and one based on her identification with woman number two. Does anybody follow what I just said? I thought so.
But if it could be read both ways, try and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
you could swap.
yeah. So now I'm going to put up for you guys on the internet, and I think it's getting late, and I only want to just give you a little bit of an idea. You guys who have your sheets in front of you, you take a look. And you guys who see the screen can see what I did over here. You see that there's the first speaker, the true mother, the false mother, and the dialogue total. You see that?
yeah.
At the top, the pink, the green, and the red. All the
Very
way to the top.
coordinated, very coordinated,
Very what?
coordinated.
Yes. It's extremely, exacting. I want to show you an amazing thing about center points here. When you're in a trial, Joe, when you're in a trial, there's a stenographer, right?
Mhm.
Now, when the stenographer is writing down, she writes out the words of the trial. Over here, there's a narrator speaking. The narrator's words are not the trial. They're for you, the reader, to understand. But when you read the trial, what do you call it? What's the words in English? We have the transcript of the trial. What?
Transcripts.
The transcript of the trial. You just hear plaintiff said this, defendant said this, the lawyer, and you just see, right? So that's the words of the trial, right? Part of the trial isn't enough. The plaintiff said,
Right.
right? In a trial, when you're there, you're just hearing people talk.
Yeah.
So I took only in here the words of the plaintiff and the defendant and the judge. Those are the only three people that speak here besides the narrator. The narrator, of course, is helping you along to understand this story. As you can see, the amount of words in the story are how much, Morris? Can you see? You have your sheets? 212 words. It opens with a narrator. 9 words, correct? Verse 1. Verse 2. And one of the women said, which one? We don't know. We already went through this. We don't know. Bi Adoni. You see that where I start counting?
Right.
And she talks and presents her case as we all saw, right? When she presents a case, you see it goes all the way down to the bottom, right? Right? If the first speaker, I have a thing in column G. You see that column G? The first 29 words to the bottom of the line at the bottom. You see that, Ronnie? Do you see it, Ron? Okay. My screen got dark for some reason. I don't know why. I hope it's not dying. Oh, it's dying. I'm going to lose them. Oh, 20%. Okay. We're going to end up soon. I just want you to see that as the speaker goes along and talks in the next column, you get to the end of the dialogue. The last verse says, "Va'et bonen elav babokir," and I looked in the morning, "V'hineh lo haya b'ni asher yalati." That is the opening statement of the first mother, right? The first woman who presents a case. Is everybody online listening? Because we're down to the last few minutes. We're not going to be able to go for more than 2-3 minutes. Everybody listening?
Yeah.
Yes.
You see how many words were spoken? Look, I'm pointing it out with my mouse.
Yep.
You see 69?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, that there are exactly 138 words of dialogue. If you'll go to the end, Ronnie, go look at the total of dialogue words, Morris. Do you see the total dialogue words?
Yep.
Right? What are the total dialogue of all the people combined? You see 138 here, everybody? Right? That's that's the one woman, the second woman, and the king.
Right.
Right? The king says 40 words. So if you have 138, that means the women spoke 98 words, right? Half of the trial, right? 69 words is her statement. 69 more words is exactly at the crossover point where the other G starts talking. Do you get it? 69 and 69. So right after she finishes talking, you have now reached the exact center of the case. The next woman who now comes up to make her claim, right? Whether that be the true mother or the false mother, right? That woman starts talking at the 70th word, which is the next 69 words. You think that was accidental? You think that was accidental, Joe? Exactly at the halfway mark of the trial's transcript, exactly at that juncture, the other woman gets up, and now you're in part 2 of the trial.
Right.
You
But
folks
the first
online,
69 words are
all her.
the first woman.
She's everything is the first woman. The whole case is presented by her. The next woman gets up, and when she starts talking, and she says, the second woman says, law, no. In ki b'niyahai u'b'nechameh. How many words does she say? 1, 2, 3, 4. She says 6 words. That's it. The other woman said 69 words. She says 6 words, and then the other woman starts talking and says, law, ki b'niyahai. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see that? Amazing? In other words, whoever was the true mother, whether it be speaker number 1 or speaker number 2, 75 of 81 words were said by one of the mothers. The other mother only said 6 words. No. My b'niyahai u'b'nechamet. Law. P. B'niyahai u'b'nechamet. In any event, it's getting late and my computer is going and it's 9 o'clock. Maybe next week we'll finish off this case. What I want you to know is that structurally over here, these papers that you have in front of you, every single spot means something. There's not one word in this chart that doesn't mean something in its count to the relevance of the case.
Why don't you go back to the first part? I'm trying to read how it continues in the graph here. I see that the first speaker,
Yeah,
right, speaks first,
Yeah.
words, and then another 5 more.
six more
Six
from
more,
the
six
other
more,
woman,
right.
right? Right?
No, 6 more from the other woman, but then she speaks again, the first woman.
The first one then responds to her.
Right.
And then it
When
says,
that another woman never comes back.
that's it, done. We're done. No, you won't hear from them.
And then it's 1, 2? Is it?
Woman number one, woman number two, finished with that.
First hit.
That's no. The first half is after she presents the case.
Right.
Speaker, woman number one. Woman number two says 6 words to respond. No, it's not true. Woman number one who comes back and says, yes, it is. It's yours, right?
When she speaks again, where?
No, later on, it's going to be, you're going to know who the real mother is, right? Oh, split him. The other one says, no, don't split him. Keep the baby alive. You know who the real mother is, of course, right? In that case. And of course, there's the king. The king says 40 words. Guess what the middle word of the 40 words of the king who speaks is?
Let's see.
Cut the baby in half.
Huh.
The middle of his words are the middle words, gezoru, cut it. The middle of the trial is the middle of the transcript. Every time in this text, it says that something about, what's the middle word of the whole text? With the dialogue, with the narrator. 212. What's the middle of 212, Morris?
112, 106.
106. The middle words of the whole thing with the transcript, with the thing, with the dialogue, with the narrator. In other words, the whole 13 verses, Sammy. You and me? That's 106 and 106, right?
Yeah.
You know what the 2 words are? Zebani. When I found this 10 years ago, of course, I jumped up 3 times, hit the ceiling. There was a hole in the ceiling for my head because I couldn't believe how perfect it is. Zebani. Is that what this case is about? This one says Zebani. The other one says Zebani. Right? So what's the center words? Zebani. Right?
That's crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
You
There's
keep doing this every time. It's ridiculous.
Isn't it ridiculous? It's amazing.
Gorgeous.
So this continues. I want you to know, we'll end on this note. I want you to know that this continues like this all the way through. Let me cancel this. Everything that happens in here on this chart, every time it says, it refers to the child in red, right? Every time it comes up at a critical number in the number counts. An example would be Asher Yalati, the Torah Ha'isha. You see Asher Yalati, the Torah Ha'isha, that's column 2. Column 2 of Hebrew words. You see that, Ronnie? Look, Ronnie, right there. Column 2 of the Hebrew words, right? Words 80, 81, 82, and 83. Backwards, 130. So the 80th word, Asher Yalati, the Torah Ha'isha. 130. You're going to see 80 and 130 and covenantal numbers. And every single time one of the key words are used, it's going to occur at a critical juncture. I can't do it tonight because we've gone too long. But in any event, of course, there's 138 words. That's 138, right, of testimony, correct? And of the judge combined. So almost everything in this thing, and then when you'll see the next time, Gezruat High, it's going to be again 80, 81, 82, and 83 backwards, and 130, 131, 132, 133 forwards. You see it? In other words, what happens in column 2, 80, 81, 82, 83, 130, 130, right, is on the words Asher Yaladah. Read it, Mars.
Asher Yalati, the Torah Ha'isha.
Right. Go to this one. What are the words? Right. Again, the Yalud. It's going to always occur at exactly the same spot with the same covenantal numbers. So it's filled with the covenantal symbolism at critical junctures. It's filled with showing you that this trial that you're reading now is not some lucky piece of text that you got that was rewritten through the last 2,500 years, but the prophetic writer, this is where I bring a tremendous amount of proof that the prophetic writer of this and what you're reading the text as it was. It's very hard for what I just now, I only showed you 3 of the things. It's very hard for these things to be accidental, right? So it's a very, very interesting thing, the way the case is presented, how exacting the structure is, how the covenantal number symbol is in it, how the trial is split exactly at the 69, taking off on the 70, right? The other half. Everything about it is pointing to the fact, oh, there's everybody, Jonathan, Sammy, hi guys, okay. So everything is pointing to a text that it's in its original form and is ambiguous and meant to be ambiguous, and for you to sit there and try and figure if you could make it tilt to one side or the other. I give you the challenge, everybody. It's only 13 verses, and see if you could crack it. It's in Torat Moshe. Torat Moshe has the chart in it, has everything for you to read, in the Jubilee book. And maybe you can come up. 10 years ago, I came up with zilch. Impossible to say by reading it. It's one of the, I always favored that the true mother talks first. That's what I favored. I always tried to make the case. Me and Alex Schindler fighting it out, and we couldn't come up with a thing. No, but I like Biaduni. Biaduni, she says. She's the one that says it. No, but maybe that's the way you talk. And you talk with honorific, and like we say, trying every single thing to make the case every time to then the structure, trying to use the structure. Then when you use the structure, you say, oh, that's the way it is, and it works back and forth, and it's symmetrical, and so on and so forth. So we weren't able to crack it, but clearly we can close by saying this. Let's say it's true that you cannot draw any conclusions from the he said, she said case. Right, Morris?
Yeah.
Right? What does that imply? You were given a case that you can't draw any conclusion, and that there's no way of knowing the way this case was presented. I'm throwing this to the table now. You can't figure out who was talking first, who was talking second, you can at the end, the real mother, and you know what she says. What does it imply about the case that it's impossible to solve the case? It was presented in the case, it's solved. It's impossible to figure out who's who. What do you say? It's impossible when it was written in such a way that all you could say is, she said, she said. Who's she? I don't know. Who's the second she? I don't know.
Right, so presenting you like you're the guy who's trying to discern it, and it's not discernible.
It can't be discerned.
Right.
And therefore what?
Therefore, you have to do something in order to draw out the answer, right? Which is what Shlomo is going to do.
Right. You've got to come up with an answer, correct?
Right.
In other words, you've got to come up with a solution that's brilliant. Yeah? I can't see Jonathan and Raquel, but I could see Sammy, thank God. And he's going, yes. He's
Yeah,
there's
but
Raquel.
it's
Outside
very
the
hard
context.
because I don't know, at the end of the day, it's a he said, she said at the, like, that's how it always goes. So is that the point? He said, so nobody ever knows.
Unless you come up with an outside solution where you work on the it's impossible to know the answer to the case. There is no way to bring any evidence. It's a pure she said case. It's written purely so that the only way you could do it is by his brilliant solution, correct? Oh, cut the baby, get the real mother to express her feelings. Oh, that's the real mother. Now I figured the case, right? If you didn't do that, you could never figure anything out. So it's presenting you with a thing that it's impossible to know unless the true mother reveals, listen carefully, I'm going to end the class now. Unless the true mother reveals her feelings, correct? A true mother would reveal her feelings. Yes? Isn't that that's the brilliant part of this, right? What he knows that if you answer the trial, the judge, meaning the king, says, if I come up with something that is so potent, it'll force the hand of the true mother.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm really doing a lot now to make you see how
Yeah.
it really was smart, right? It's impossible to know. You look at the transcript, it's you could sit all day long, whether you do it structurally, whether you do it by the words, you're going to end up with zero. So you got to come up with a thing that says, I'm going to force the hand, listen carefully, of the true mother. The fourth one, never going to say what the true mother is going to say, never. And the minute she says that, give it to her, right? Brilliant.
Very smart.
Okay. Now, what does that say about Shalom? How powerful? No. How powerful is the condemnation?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Now, how powerful is the condemnation? You were given a case about him condemning himself because the true king would never do that to his nation. Just like we said, the true mother would never say, cut the baby. A true king would never let his nation be split and divided and fighting. A true king would sacrifice everything for his nation, and he did none of that.
So it's like what you said in the beginning, a wise man, you have a wise man that, what was the saying? that you
Looks
said?
like he's so bright. Yeah. Well, if you were so smart,
Right.
where were you when the nation was getting splintered and broken, and you were taking advantage of one part and letting the other part go down the tubes because you wanted to build a nice house and a nice temple, and you wanted to have a lot of food? It describes the whole story for 11 chapters, only describes his table, which when you read how much food there is, that's the entire country has to supply him with his daily food for him in his palace, because it's an amazing amount of food, right? Amazing. Like, you can't believe when you read it, it's over the top, right? How many animals they kill a day in them, and the vegetables, it's like your average Shabbat meal. But another, but it's some mind-blowing thing that how much of a chunk of the nation has to work on it, right? To service him for his food. And then the rest of the story, 11 chapters, is about what's it about? It's about his temple, his house and his summer home deal, and how amazing it was, right? That's what the story's about. All of it, 11 chapters. So what is the condemnation? It's that powerful. How powerful? The brilliant thing. You're brilliant? Where were you? You're a king? That's what you were. You understand? It's a much bigger condemnation when I say it that way. Who's the true mother? Only way? Force the hand. Okay, it forces his hand. Forces you to see just how far short he fell of being the king of the entire nation. All right?
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. I gotta run.
Okay, a
I'll talk about
pleasure.
it.
We went later, so please forgive me, guys, but
Great. All good. All good. Great
So
class.
am I. It was great.
Okay, I'm glad you enjoyed. Have a
Bye.
good one. Have a good one, folks.
See you later.
Okay. Good to see you all. Good to see you all.
Likewise, welcome back. Happy to see you feeling better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Use the case.
Yeah.